It happened in Los Angeles, 1947. The city was restless, humming with post-war energy, and secrets lurking beneath the Hollywood lights. In the early hours of January 15th, as the sun struggled to pierce the fog, a young mother named Betty Bersinger pushed her daughter's stroller along a quiet sidewalk in the Leimert Park neighborhood. She could have never imagined she would become the first witness to a scene that would haunt the city for decades. What she saw, at first, made no sense. There, in the scrubby weeds of a vacant lot, was what looked like a broken mannequin, pale, motionless, perfectly cut in half. But as she got closer, horror dawned. This was not a mannequin, but the naked, butchered body of a young woman. Betty screamed and fled to the nearest house to call police. The crime scene that greeted detectives was like something out of a nightmare. The woman's body had been sliced in two at the waist with surgical precision. There was almost no blood on the ground. It was clear the murder had happened somewhere else, and the killer had meticulously cleaned the corpse before leaving it in the open. The top half had been placed with her arms raised above her head, elbows bent at right angles. Her lower half was positioned about a foot away, legs spread wide, in a grotesque, almost theatrical pose. But what truly seared itself into the minds of investigators and the public alike were the brutal injuries to her face and body. The killer had sliced both sides of her mouth almost to the ears, creating a grotesque, permanent smile known as a Glasgow smile. The body had been completely drained of blood, leaving the skin marble white. Chunks of flesh had been cut away from her thigh and breast, and the flesh had been arranged and stuffed inside her own body cavity. The killer had washed her thoroughly, even shampooing her hair, erasing nearly all traces of evidence. The only marks left were rope burns on her wrists and ankles, proof she had been tied and tortured before her death. News of the murder hit Los Angeles like a lightning bolt. Police had never seen anything so deliberately cruel and cold-blooded. The brutality was almost clinical, as if the killer wanted to showcase his handiwork and taunt the world. The press was quick to seize on the story, and within hours, newspapers all over the country carried the headline, "The Black Dahlia Murder." The name was inspired by the victim's black clothing and the 1946 noir film The Blue Dahlia, but the reality was darker than any fiction. Police quickly identified the victim as Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old who had been drifting through Los Angeles in search of something better, a job, a role in the movies, or just a place to belong. In life, she was described as strikingly beautiful, with jet black hair, pale skin, and green eyes. She'd come west chasing a Hollywood dream, but in the months before her death, she'd lived a transient, precarious existence, crashing with acquaintances, scraping by on the kindness of strangers, and making fleeting connections that left her vulnerable in a city filled with predators. Detectives worked around the clock, interrogating every man who had ever known her, scouring Los Angeles for clues and fielding hundreds of calls from would-be witnesses and confessions from fame-hungry cranks. They tracked down Elizabeth's last days, a ghostly trail through hotels, bars, and diners. On January 9th, she had been dropped off at the lobby of the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles by a former boyfriend, Robert Red Manley. She told him she was meeting her sister. No one would see her alive again. What happened between the moment Elizabeth disappeared into the Biltmore's marble halls and the morning her body was found in that empty lot is still a mystery. The week-long gap is a blank space that has frustrated investigators for decades. Some believe she was held captive, tortured for days, before her killer finally murdered and dismembered her. The rope burns, the savagery, and the absence of blood all suggest a prolonged, deliberate killing carried out by someone with medical skill, or at least a cold, methodical mindset. In the days that followed, the media became a vital, if reckless, player in the case. Reporters swarmed the police, the morgue, and even Elizabeth's family back in Massachusetts. In a shocking display of callousness, a newspaper reporter contacted her mother under false pretenses, fishing for personal details before revealing Elizabeth had been murdered. As the case grew colder, the press began to speculate wildly about Elizabeth's life, painting her alternately as an aspiring starlet, a seductress, and a tragic lost soul. Some stories accused her of being promiscuous or involved in the city's dark underbelly, but most of this was pure tabloid fantasy. What is known is that Elizabeth was young, lonely, and alone, in a city that could be beautiful by day and merciless by night. The killer, meanwhile, seemed to delight in the attention. A week after the murder, a package arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper office. Inside were Elizabeth's birth certificate, business cards, photos, and an address book with pages torn out. All the items had been wiped clean with gasoline. The sender, who signed as the Black Dahlia Avenger, included a chilling, taunting note. "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." It was the closest the police ever got to their murderer's true identity, and it led nowhere. As weeks became months, the investigation ballooned into one of the largest in Los Angeles history. More than 150 suspects were questioned, dozens of leads chased to dead ends. Doctors, ex-boyfriends, bar owners, even women who knew Elizabeth all came under scrutiny. Some suspects were eerily plausible, especially a handful of doctors and medical students whose skills matched the surgical dissection of the body, but no physical evidence tied any of them to the murder. Over the years, certain names have lingered as possible culprits. George Hodel, a wealthy and eccentric doctor with a sinister reputation, became a favorite suspect among both police and amateur sleuths. Decades after the murder, Hodel's own son, an LAPD homicide detective, would publicly accuse him, pointing to wiretap recordings and circumstantial evidence. Others believe Elizabeth may have been killed by a jilted lover, a predatory stranger, or even a serial killer responsible for similar unsolved mutilations across the country. But the truth is, no theory has ever gone beyond speculation, and every suspect has slipped through the net for lack of hard proof. With each year that passed, the Black Dahlia became less a person and more a myth. Her image, dark hair, arched brows, enigmatic half-smile, became iconic, plastered across books, films, and endless tabloid retellings. But the real Elizabeth Short was a woman who wanted to be loved, who came to Hollywood hoping for something bright, and instead became the central figure in one of America's darkest stories. The case remains officially unsolved. The LAPD files are thick with dead leads, contradictory statements, and evidence lost to time. The site where her body was found is now just another patch of urban sprawl, with nothing to hint at the horror that once played out there. But the legend of the Black Dahlia lingers, as chilling today as it was that January morning in 1947. What endures most is the sheer brutality of the crime. Elizabeth Short was not just killed. She was destroyed, erased with almost surgical detachment, and displayed as if to send a message. The killer's motives remain as mysterious as his identity, but the deliberate mutilation, cut in half, drained of blood, cleaned, and left in public view, suggests a level of planning and hatred that goes beyond mere impulse. The Glasgow smile carved into her face, the removal and placement of flesh, the care in washing the body and posing it in such a theatrical manner, these details haunt anyone who studies the case. It is as if the murderer wanted Elizabeth Short to be remembered, to become a legend not for her life, but for her death. And so, 75 years later, we still tell her story, not because we know the ending, but because the darkness at its heart remains unsolved. a blank space in the city's memory, a reminder that even the brightest lights cast the longest shadows.